Vim aqui no seu podcast para te contar que com o app BitBank, o primeiro criptobanco do Brasil, você pode ter um cartão que te dá até 10% de cashback em reais, criptomoedas ou até dólar digital. A experiência é simples e intuitiva, mesmo para quem nunca investiu. Comece hoje mesmo a receber cashback em compras de qualquer valor. Acesse bit.com.br. BitBank, para você viver investindo.
Today on CityCast DC, we're talking to Tony Willliams, who spent 8 years as mayor of DC. He got the job in 1998 at a time of crisis and was credited with being the ultra wonk who turned around city government. Well, now we're at another moment of anxiety about Washington's future, and we figured we'd check in with him about just how screwed we are and what he thinks we ought to do next. Today is Monday, July 29th. I'm Michael Schaefer, and this is what DC is talking about. Hey, Mayor Willliams, thank you for being here.
I'm happy to be with you.
So, I was thinking about when you first became mayor in 1998. Among other things, the city of Washington had like a little more than 100,000 fewer people then, which I guess is a sign of success. But I wonder if it means, like, do you get, the city's changed so much, do you get recognized on the street? Or are these newcomers have no idea who you are?
Yeah, I mean, word gets around, and you'd be surprised. I mean, on an average day, I'll still get noticed or stopped about 10 times around town by different people. So, yeah, it's hard to go low profile.
There's been a lot of talk this year. It was a rough budget cycle. Crime was up. The sense of downtown in crisis has been in the news. You also became mayor at a time when the city felt in crisis. Can you paint us a picture of that circumstance?
Well, if you look at DC is really a story of three strands of American history in general and as it relates to cities. So you've got on one, it's like almost like geology. On one stratum, I guess, you have the history of civil rights and the fight for civil rights. Then you have the fight for full representation for D.C. because D.C. was created after there had been a run on the Capitol after the Revolutionary War. I think this was during the Articles of Confederation. There was a run on the Capitol in Philly, and the Congress called for help from the state of Pennsylvania. State of Pennsylvania said, well, we agree with the veterans. So Congress had to decamp in Princeton. Now, they had decided to come down to Washington by virtue of agreement between Jefferson and Hamilton, wherein the North would allow the capital to go to a southern locale, and the southern states, which were rich, would pick up the Revolutionary War debt. So we ended up in Washington. But because of that run on the Capitol, we don't have representation. And this has been a problem for now almost, 250 years.
Right. They thought they would make this like abstract city where nobody had any interest in anything. But of course, human beings don't work out that way.
Yeah, the Federalist Papers, Madison said it would be a problem and that we were solving one problem, which was insulating the Congress from parochial influence, but at the same time, totally exposing D.C. to the parochial preferences of various congressmen who could do what they will because we no longer had representation and couldn't really fend for ourselves. So you have that stratum. And then the last stratum is just the basic story of the American city, explosive growth in the industrial period, decline of the American city after World War II for various reasons, everything from general disinvestment, federal subsidies, racial distancing, crime, poor schools, dramatic flight and decline of the American city across the country, the hollowing out of the American city. And then by the time I got around, I was trying to get D.C. on this third stage. By then, in 1998, this third stage was already firmly established in places like Chicago under Richie Daley, New York starting under Ed Koch and continuing through David Dinkins and Rudy Giuliani, San Francisco, okay? So I was trying to get D.C. on that track. And now all cities are in a new period, post-COVID telecommuting. Are we in a new stage of decline again, or are we on just a bump on this overall revitalization of the city? I think we're in a big, it's a long bump, it's a deep bump, but I think we're firmly established on the reinvigoration of the American city. If you take a city like Washington, D.C., the problems I faced were racial distancing. I think that's declined. People didn't like the management of the city. I think that has improved. People willing to invest in the city, I think that has improved. A lot of the fundamentals are still there, but all of our cities have to face this new crisis with our collapse of commercial real estate, which for many of our cities, and certainly Washington, D.C., with a federal presence, is profoundly important.
You know, I was about 2 years into my career as journalist when you ran for mayor, covered that. At that time, the problem that we understood as journalists, it was sort of a lot of the problems of disinvestment, of poverty, of services that don't work. And flash forward a few years and it became kind of the problems of affluence, of displacement, gentrification, things that were maybe, trends that started good, but where some of the dissatisfactions were shown. And now I think we're in this third place where, as you say, the crisis of downtowns and dealing with the Zoom post-COVID era. Looking at the budget, looking at the state of downtown, how much trouble do you think we're in?
Now, I would pick sides. I think the mayor has taken the right stance in this last budget, calling for a reduction of $500 million in spending, which I would argue, and many of my folk would argue, is not enough, but is certainly starting us down the road toward fiscal sustainability. The council went in, added back that $500 million and raised taxes. This is not the road to salvation. This is a road to perdition. Why? Because when I left the city, we were on a trajectory. This is getting nerdy, so everybody's falling, now taking their afternoon.
That's why the people love you, man.
Okay. But we were on a trajectory to have from basically being bankrupt and cash poor to having AAA-rated debt and some of the highest reserves per capita in the world. And now we're on the road to cash borrowing again, borrowing for cash. That's not a good place to be from a financial point of view. So if we get into a cash position where we're borrowing and the market closes on us, we've got a control board again. So we're not on a good trajectory now. We need to reverse it and get pointed in the right direction. And I hope that, again, I think the mayor is taking the right lead on this. I think everybody get behind what we're trying to do, what she's trying to do. Freudian slip there, I'm no longer mayor, but what we're trying to do and move the city to a good place. Because look, a great economy benefits everyone. We're in a capitalist system. We're not in a socialist state. And I don't say that pejoratively. I'm just saying it declaratively. We're not. So we need investors to support the revenues, to support our government, to make this important investments in social services and public goods.
So you were CFO of D.C. You were a CFO who clashed with the mayor. The job is sort of set up in a way to enable the CFO to clash with the mayor. I was curious, during the budget cycle, Glenn Lee, the current CFO, said D.C.'s budget is in dire straits. He told the council, I am not going to allow you to do some of the things you want to do and classify some of the money the way you want to classify it. I'm curious what your perspective was watching that.
I was there at the creation of the CFO, the independent CFO and the CFO Act, and I believe that, health and prosperity are founded on I actually do believe this. I think health and prosperity are based on a strong, autonomous CFO. And I think the CFO just needs to be like the marshal out west in the old town. You just need to be tough and just do what you need to do.
Enquanto você curte som, a ClearSale cuida da segurança antifraude de mais de 100 mil empresas em todo o mundo. Só falta a sua. Fale com os nossos especialistas e fique um passo à frente das fraudes e riscos de crédito. Encontre soluções flexíveis que se adaptam às necessidades da sua empresa e garanta múltiplas camadas de proteção em cada transação. ClearSale, one step ahead.
Você que tá aí ouvindo o podcast, sabia que o poder de construir a carreira profissional dos seus sonhos também está em suas mãos? Na pós-graduação do Senac, você encontra diversos cursos com 12 meses de duração, além de estudar com aulas presenciais mais EAD. E tem mais, o TCC é opcional. Tudo isso para você conciliar trabalho, estudos e vida social. Quer mais? Você também pode ter até 50% de desconto. Confira as condições no site sp.senac.br/pós-graduação. Quer saber? Senac.
You know, when you were the CFO and then the mayor, it's like, just from in political terms, you kind of had a heavy, right? The Congress they were going to mess with us. They were messing with us. And so we had to get our stuff together. Right now, the mayor, Bowser, looks at the council. There's just not a lot of people there with the personal muscle memory of that time when there wasn't enough money and when all of the bad things that would follow. Same with the press who cover the city, same with a lot of the residents who live here. I'm curious, how would you do it without a heavy to kind of keep you off the road to perdition?
I think that memory quotient or component is very important. I always look at Germany under Helmut Schmidt to get totally nerdy. Germany under Helmut Schmidt before the euro, the Deutschmark is one of the most powerful currencies in the world. Why? Because the Germans remembered the, horrors of Hitler, the Weimar Republic, which led to that political instability, hyperinflation. They never wanted to go there again. And, on a minor scale, obviously without the horrors, but on a minor scale, the consul and yours truly, we remembered the control board. We never wanted to go back to that control board. And you're right, people are forgetting that now. And what I would do is I would call the question if I were the mayor. I would say, look, this could be equated to one of the largest base closings in American history. Now, every time there's been a major base closing across the country, the federal government has provided transition funds to these communities to help them get back on their feet. We should ask this from the federal government. Help us get back on our feet. Help us make the necessary investments, conversions, what have you, to get back on our feet. Use this as a carrot, and then the stick is we got to take the hard medicine to, in a thoughtful way, using these funds, bring down our break even, reduce our workforce on a multi-year period, reduce our programs reduce the number of programs, the level of appropriate programs to where we're on a sustainable basis. Again, that's what I really advocate that we do.
It's especially tough politically at a moment when last year, crime was up. It was, sources, I just know conversations around the neighborhood. It was a thing everyone's talking about. The stats have come back down this year, but it is a problem that generally makes people want to open up the pocketbook and spend money on stuff.
Yeah, it's like a lot of problems in the social realm. I think you've got to balance, as you're experimenting with new tools. And I'm a big believer that we need to desperately learning the lessons of George Floyd. These kids are all walking tragedies. They're all truant. They don't have stable homes. I mean, it's horrible. So we need to focus on better initiatives in rehabilitation, better initiatives in prevention, in reducing recidivisms and reentry. All those things are so important. But while we're experimenting and developing those initiatives, we just got to go with the tried and true. As imperfect as they are, with the collateral damage they have, they're our only tools right now.
Right. I'm just pulling back government spending and programs in the late 90s, early 2000s would have been a lot tougher in a crime environment where crime seemed to be going up, not down.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that, the way I described it to the citizens was, and they bought into it, was we had a badly driven, underpowered, overloaded car on a very bad road. Now, when you think about it, if you're a city, for the reasons I described, the cycles of cities, it's hard being an American city. So you're on a tough road. Margins are thin. Decisions have consequences. So it's hard. We were badly driven. I think Marion Barry, in his prime, was actually a very good mayor. He was certainly a brilliant man. He was a fabulous civil rights leader. But at the end of his time, he was not a good mayor. That's the way it is. You know what I mean? In all due respect. So that was a problem, and I told him he could have led this reform in a way nobody else could have because he had a following. people wouldn't follow him. But I digress. Badly driven, underpowered, and we're overloaded because we're promising everything to everyone. And if you're badly driven, you're going to end up in a situation where you can't do anything for anyone. That's the situation we're in, and we don't want to get back to that situation. It's balancing right sources and uses, the supply of revenues, or what we assign as our priorities. All those are very important things. I mean, they sound like, amateurish or like, cliches, but they're important.
The other thing that I think a lot of people could never have imagined, is the idea that downtown Washington would ever not be full of these, guys with lanyards and sort of undramatic, unromantic government jobs who commute into town and go out to some sneeze guard place and buy lunch. I mean, I can imagine sort of some mayor of Detroit, in the 50s or 60s saying, well, the auto factories will never close. They'll be there forever. And that's sort of how people thought of it. In your current life, you spend a lot of time studying cities and what's working and what's not. What do you think the future of downtown needs to look like in order to make DC sustainable?
There isn't a switch that the president can flip and everyone will come back. I mean, I've talked to people who have familiarity with the federal workforce. A lot of these people who are supposed to just automatically come back don't even live in the DMV. They're like in Idaho. How are they going to automatically start coming back to work every day? So there is definitely going to be a diminution in the workforce. At the same time, what the mayor is working to do in the council, both through visioning on downtown, looking at strategies for re-energizing the downtown, is how do we leverage that core federal presence that is not going to move, right? Arts and culture, the museums, the Capitol headquarters that always will have a place in Washington. How do we leverage that to bring in more residents? Now, look, you think about telecommuting. Yeah, you can telecommute from, somewhere out in the boonies, but you can also telecommute. I can live in Washington and have, a choice of where I work and have access to all the amenities of Washington, D.C. So making the city clean and safe, continuing to improve our schools, and finding ways to make the appropriate conversions to some of these properties is really going to help add even more residents than you were talking about earlier. And I would also, and I've been arguing that we should try to bring, both as a way to diversify our economy and also as a message to the world, we should try to bring a company or two or three headquarters of a major company that's willing to be in a blue state. Let's get one of those companies to be in Washington, D.C. And that helps better frame and organize our public policy, too. When we, as part of this revitalization of Washington, we brought a lot of retail to Washington that had not been here before. We now consider it kind of prosaic, but we have Home Depot and Lowe's and Target. And these stores at Washington didn't have them when I came around. And we worked mightily to bring these stores here. We need a new dialogue now. Here's what we need to do to bring good companies to D.C. to help make up this gap in our downtown workforce.
So you are CEO of the Federal City Council, which promotes economic development, is underwritten by a lot of the big businesses and real estate firms. Yeah. Is this the stuff you all are working on to revitalize downtown?
Yeah, a major, we've always worked on broad-based public policy initiatives of a sustainable economy, education reform, major projects like creating the metro, funding the metro, Union Station. And now we are heavily involved with the mayor and council on revitalization of downtown. Two of our trustees, for example, Jody McLean and Debbie Redner-Salzberg, are heading up Players Gallery Task Force, which was mounted on the advent of Monumental leaving. And even when Monumental announced they were returning, the mayor and Jody and Debbie all felt it was important to continue this effort. So that's underway. We're very happy to play a supporting role in that. I'm, along with my successor, Adrian Fenty, your honorary co-chair, yeah.
You were also mayor when the Nats came to D.C. Now there's talk of trying to bring the Commanders back. What do you think of that? How would you approach it?
I think what the mayor is doing, first trying to get a site over at RFK where the team can be located. I think, is agnostic as to whether there's a team there or not. First, get the site, and the mayor's doing that. Practicality, right, is the goal here. So all supportive of that. And then I think what you try to do now, and you're seeing this in other cities. You're seeing this in California over in Inglewood, where Hollywood Park used to be. I grew up in L.A. You're seeing this in Minnesota, where the Minnesota Vikings have their stadium in Minneapolis. You're seeing mixed use around the stadiums, which helps support the economics of the stadium.
Well, can't you do the mixed use without the team, without the ball field?
Yeah, but I think there is an important, people have different views. I think that psychologically, for the city, having the team is a great thing. I could tell you as mayor, when the team won, the mood, it's like the beehive. If the team won, the beehive had one sound. If the team lost, beehive had a different sound. Yep.
When you get in these conversations, pretty quickly it goes to I can't believe they would turn over an open parcel of land to a stadium use at a time when housing is so expensive. And then that leads people to leap to gentrification and demographic change of the city in the last 20, 30 years. How do you see those two things interacting, or whether they have any relation? And then two, what would you do about, or what ought Washington to be doing about gentrification?
I don't think that these stadiums properly done are an either or. I mean, we brought the Nats to D.C. It was a successful economic enterprise. We paid the debt back ahead of time. There's been huge development around the site. Everybody thought, oh my God, you're bankrupting the city. We're all going to die. And no, at the same time, this was a year after, but the funds were already being put in place or were in place. We had a record modernization of all of our schools, all of our parks, and the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So it wasn't an either or thing. You can do both. You can invest in the social goods in terms of housing and services. And also, which I would argue is a social good, if half the city wants a team, I think half the city should be allowed to have a team. Why should only one half of the agenda be predominant?
Right. What do you think, looking 10 years out, what's the biggest transformation you expect out of D.C.?
I think you're going to see the downtown re-energized, because we do have core assets in terms of amenities, quality of life, that I think we will continue to see crime tracked down. I hope and pray there will be further developments in schools. We had our progress in school achievement, where we were lagging the country, and then by the time of COVID, we were leading the country. There was a big interruption across the country in school performance improvement by COVID. I think get that back going. And the long and short, I think you will see the population increase. I think you will see the economy downtown diversified and revitalized. I do believe that. And it sounds like I'm the mayor's marketing agent. I do support this mayor. I think she's done a great job through challenging times. I think that she has put together some very powerful public-private partnerships. She's got a great team around her.
She's up in a couple of years. You ever think about getting back in the game if she leaves?
Oh, no, because my wife would divorce me if I ran again. I'm in agreement with her that my second term was it, and that's it.
Mayor Willliams, thank you so much for being here.
I really enjoyed this. I'm glad we were able to get together.
Me too.
Okay, take care.
And that's all for today here on CityCast DC. If you enjoyed the show, do us a favor and tell a friend and subscribe to our morning newsletter. It's called Hey DC. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye.